They say the dead never speak to the living. Arjun Roy believed that too. To him, death was final, absolute, silent. That night was no different. Rain tapping against the window, the city asleep, his phone lying untouched on the table. Then, at exactly 1:47 a.m., the phone vibrated. Once, slow, heavy, as if something on the other side was waiting to be answered. There was no number, no name, just a blank space where identity should have been. Arjun's heartbeat grew louder than the rain outside. Every logical part of his mind told him to reject the call, yet something deeper, older, pulled him closer. The phone kept ringing, longer this time, as if growing impatient. The line opened with static, then breathing, slow, uneven, familiar. Arjun whispered hello, barely recognizing his own voice. When the answer came, his blood turned cold. It spoke his name softly, lovingly. It was his mother's voice, the same voice he had heard for the last time 7 years ago, moments before she died. Arjun remembered that night clearly. The missed call, the unanswered ring, the regret that followed him for years. He had promised himself the dead would never forgive, never return. Yet here she was, breathing through static, calling him back from the other side, as if death itself had bent its rules. The voice grew serious, stripped of warmth. It told him it wasn't calling to comfort him, nor to haunt him. It was calling to warn him. The screen flickered, and 3 words appeared like a verdict. 3 days remaining. Before Arjun could speak, the call ended. Silence returned to the room, but the countdown had already begun. Arjun didn't sleep after the call. He sat there until the sky began to pale, replaying every word in his head like a curse that refused to fade. 3 days. No explanation. No mercy. He tried to convince himself it was a hallucination, grief leaking through old wounds. But deep down, he knew something had changed. The air in the apartment felt watched, and the phone, silent now, felt less like a device and more like a loaded weapon waiting to fire again. He checked the call log again. And again. There was nothing. No missed call, no incoming number, no record that the phone had ever rung. Yet the echo of his mother's voice still lived inside his skull. That was when the fear sharpened. Hallucinations don't leave warnings, and they don't know things they shouldn't. At work, Arjun tried to pretend everything was normal. Emails, deadlines, small talk. But then he overheard a whisper behind him. A coworker said her phone rang at 3 a.m. The voice on the other end told her not to drive today. She laughed it off. 2 hours later, her brother was in a car accident. Arjun felt his stomach drop. This wasn't just happening to him. The second call came that night. Different voice, different breath, but the same certainty. The caller told him something only Arjun knew, about a mistake he had buried years ago, a choice that ruined another life. That was when he understood the pattern. The dead weren't random, they were precise. They called the guilty, and they never called twice without a reason. 2 days left. The number burned itself into Arjun's mind. These calls weren't just warnings, they were judgments. The dead weren't predicting the future, they were enforcing it. And as Arjun stared at his own reflection, a terrifying thought surfaced. What if surviving wasn't about avoiding death at all? What if it was about facing something far worse? By the next night, Arjun stopped pretending it was a nightmare. Everywhere he went, the phone felt heavier in his pocket, like it was waiting. At exactly 1:47 a.m., it rang again. Same blank number, same cold vibration. This time, The voice wasn't his mother. It was a stranger, and it spoke calmly, like reading the weather. "Tomorrow evening," it said, "a man will die on this street." Arjun looked around at the empty road, rain soaking his shoes, and felt something worse than fear. He felt certainty. The next evening, at the exact minute the voice had said, a motorcycle skidded on the wet road. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. Arjun watched the paramedics cover the body with a white sheet. His phone vibrated once in his palm. No call, no message, just a soft pulse. That was when he understood the rule. The calls didn't threaten, they informed, and they were never wrong. Arjun finally told someone. Neela listened without laughing, without interrupting. When he finished, she asked one question that chilled him more than the calls. "What if they're not predicting death?" she said softly. "What if they're recording it?" Arjun opened his mouth to argue, but his phone rang again. This time, the voice said Neela's name. The voice didn't sound cruel. It sounded tired. "She has 2 days," it said. Arjun begged, shouted, demanded answers, but the line stayed calm. "You can't change what's coming," it whispered. "You can only choose how it happens." The call ended. Neela stared at him, and for the first time Arjun saw what the calls really delivered. Not death, choice wrapped in terror. That night, Arjun didn't sleep. He replayed every call in his mind and noticed something he had missed before. The voices always called people who were about to die, but only those who could still act. The dead weren't warning the innocent, they were recruiting the living. And Arjun realized the final truth taking shape in the dark. The calls wouldn't stop until he answered them all. The phone rang again, shrill and impossible to ignore. Arjun's fingers trembled as he picked it up. "Who is this?" he whispered, voice cracking. The line was silent for a heartbeat. Then a familiar, chilling voice came through, soft and distorted. "Arjun, don't look behind you." He froze, heart hammering, the room suddenly feeling smaller, colder. Shadows seemed to twist unnaturally around him, crawling along the walls like living creatures. "I warned you," the voice whispered. 3 days, that's all you have." Images flashed across the screen, faces he knew, faces he didn't. Each one stared with hollow eyes, frozen in silent terror. Arjun's mind raced. These weren't memories, these were warnings. Every number, every face, a thread in a web he couldn't escape. He could hear their whispers now, soft and urgent, but if he turned, they would vanish, leaving only the echo of their warning. He ran to the window, seeking safety, clarity, anything to ground him. The reflection in the glass froze him in place. His mother, eyes wide and wet with tears, silently mouthing something he couldn't hear. "It's not just me," he realized, heart racing. "It's everyone they call. It's a chain, a curse." The air thickened, the room colder than ice, and every heartbeat sounded like a countdown. "I don't understand," Arjun whispered, tears forming. The line crackled, then a deep, distorted voice said, "Some calls cannot be ignored. Every warning is real. You must act." He realized with horror that ignoring the calls didn't save anyone. It only brought them closer. Every number he answered, every face he saw carried a message he could no longer avoid. Arjun's breath caught. "What do you want from me?" he gasped. The voice whispered again, chillingly calm. "To save them, you must follow the rules." The phone went dead, leaving only the pounding of his heart and the whispering of shadows that seemed to move in rhythm with the rain. He understood now. Every call, every warning was a thread pulling him into a darkness he could neither see nor escape. and the dead were just the beginning.
The voice came again, slower this time, dripping with sorrow. "Arjun, you must warn them." He swallowed hard, feeling the icy fingers of fear curl around his spine. "Who? How? I don't understand." The line was silent for a moment. Then the static broke into whispers, snippets of names, places, faces he recognized but couldn't place. Every syllable carved itself into his mind, a puzzle he had no choice but to solve. Shadows seemed to lean closer, as if the room itself was listening.
He tried to scroll past the names, but each one glitched into something unrecognizable. Faces twisted, eyes black, mouths whispering secrets. No, this can't be real, he muttered. But reality had already shifted. Every number was a warning, every name a life he could save or lose. And every time he looked up, the shadows around him seemed to pulse, alive, waiting for him to make a mistake. A flash of lightning revealed a figure on the opposite balcony, frozen and pale, yet unmistakably human. "They are watching," the voice hissed in his ear, "and if you fail, you will join them." Arjun's pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed to drop the phone, to run, to hide. But he knew the calls were a chain, a test, and ignoring it was no longer an option. He opened the notebooks, realizing they belonged to previous victims, people who had tried to understand the calls before him. Pages filled with frantic scribbles, warnings, and sketches of shadowy figures. "They leave clues and punish mistakes," Arjun whispered, heart racing. Each note confirmed his worst fear. The dead were not just calling. They were testing him, pushing him to unravel the rules before time ran out. Arjun's breath caught. A ghostly handprint shimmered across the phone screen, pulsing with cold energy. "It's reaching for me," he whispered. The line crackled with static, then the voice returned, calm but chilling. "You have only hours. Every choice matters." Bone-deep horror. The dead were not asking for help. They were demanding obedience. The phone rang again, louder than ever, making the walls seem to tremble. Arjun froze, heart pounding, knowing he had no choice but to answer. I'm listening," he whispered. The static cleared, revealing a voice both familiar and alien. "Arjun, the rules are changing. Every call now carries a test. Fail, and you join the others." He staggered back, eyes scanning the shadows that seemed to pulse with movement. Every instinct screamed danger, yet curiosity and fear kept him rooted in place. Symbols danced across the screen, morphing into faces, morphing back into abstract patterns. Each flicker seemed alive, whispering secrets he couldn't comprehend. "No, this is impossible," he muttered. Yet the symbols made sense in a twisted way, a logic of death that only the cursed could understand. The shadows shifted closer, almost tangible, as if reminding him that time was slipping away. He scanned the pages frantically, piecing together the warnings, the rules, the methods that previous victims had used. "They want me to follow the sequence," he whispered. Each name, each number, each drawing was a link in a chain he couldn't break. The shadows pressed closer, mocking, reminding him that failure was permanent. The phone buzzed again, a chilling reminder that the dead were patient, but relentless. The timer burned into his mind, hours, minutes, seconds, each tick a heartbeat of impending doom. The figures behind him whispered his name, soft, insistent, accusing. "You have been warned," the voice said, calm, inexorable. Arjun understood now. These were not just calls. They were deadlines. Every wrong move, every hesitation, would claim another life. Fear clawed at him like ice. Every instinct screamed to run, yet he couldn't escape. "What do you want from me?" he gasped.
The line crackled, then a whisper. "Obey the rules. Save them, or become one of us." The shadows pressed closer, the rain louder, and Arjun realized with crushing certainty he was not just answering calls. He was in a test of life and death where hesitation could destroy everything he loved.
The phone rang again, and for the first time, Arjun didn't flinch. I'm ready," he whispered. The line was silent. Then a voice spoke, calm but terrifying. "You are learning, but one truth remains hidden." Arjun's blood ran cold. The shadows around him seemed to lean closer, pulsating with anticipation. Something in the voice hinted at knowledge he wasn't prepared to face, a secret the dead were holding, one that could change everything.
The static cleared just long enough for him to hear a whispered warning. The chain is unbroken. Each call binds you closer. One mistake, one hesitation, and you join them forever. His heart pounded, mind racing. Ghostly figures shimmered in the shadows, almost visible, watching, waiting. Arjun realized this was more than a test. It was a trap, and the rules were far more cruel than he could have imagined. He pored over the notebooks frantically, connecting names, numbers, and warnings. "They're testing me, but why?" he whispered. Suddenly, a page revealed a shocking truth, a diagram showing that the dead could manipulate time, memories, even reality itself. Every call was a thread, pulling him deeper into a nightmare where the line between living and dead no longer existed. Shadows moved in rhythm with the phone's vibrations, almost mocking him, reminding him that failure was permanent. Arjun's hands trembled as he read the message. From within. What does that mean? The shadows seemed to pulse closer, almost alive, as the room's temperature dropped sharply. A whisper echoed from nowhere and everywhere at once. "You are not alone, and soon you will understand." Panic surged through him. He realized that the next call wouldn't come through the phone. It would come from him, from the very essence of his own mind. Terror gripped Arjun like a vice. The reflection in the screen was not just his mother. It was the amalgamation of every voice, every call, every life bound to this chain. "It comes from within," the voice repeated, chillingly calm. "Only you can answer, or they will claim everything." His hands shook, mind spiraled, and he understood the horrifying truth. The dead were not just calling, they were rewriting reality, and the next step would demand a sacrifice beyond imagination. The phone rang one final time. Arjun's heart stopped, every nerve screaming. "This is it," the voice whispered. "Your test begins." He answered, voice trembling, and immediately the shadows surged, pressing closer. "You must see what lies within," the voice said. His vision blurred, and suddenly memories, fears, and faces of the dead overlapped with reality. He realized the call wasn't on the phone. It was in his mind, entwined with his very soul. He saw them, all the people the calls had claimed, their eyes hollow, voices whispering, reaching for him. "You cannot ignore us," they murmured, blending into one voice. Arjun's mind reeled. Every decision, every hesitation had consequences. The dead weren't just warning him, they were testing him, shaping his choices, bending reality. And now, the final choice was his alone. The symbols swirled around him, almost alive, whispering rules, warnings, and fates. "You must save them, or all is lost," the voice said. Arjun understood the chain, every call, every warning, every life connected. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus, ignoring the shadow's pull, and began following the sequence, dialing numbers he barely remembered, answering calls with careful precision. Each success brought a fleeting sense of relief, but the presence of the dead never left. Hours later, the calls stopped. The shadows retreated, the room slowly returned to normal. Arjun collapsed by the window, trembling, drained, yet alive. The ghostly faces faded, leaving only a faint sense of relief. He realized he had survived, but the lesson remained. The dead never call without purpose, and the line between life and death was thinner than he had ever imagined.
As dawn broke, Arjun whispered to himself, "I understand now." The calls had stopped, but the memory, the lessons, and the weight of the dead stayed with him. He had answered, survived, and learned that the world of the dead was never far away. Sometimes they call, and sometimes you answer. And in that answer, the line between fear and understanding becomes permanent.